Hello again, everyone, and welcome to a special Bayou Time. I'm Martin False, and what a great weekend it was as I got to go to the Aphrodite Hall here on Venture Boulevard in Houma to celebrate a 90th birthday, and that birthday was for Mr. Arthur Breaux. You may know Mr. Arthur Breaux because he started Sunrise Fried Chicken along with other things here in the area, and he's certainly been a very successful business person. I, along with the District Attorney of Terrebonne Parish, Joe H. Jr., went to wish Mr. Arthur a happy birthday. But not only that, we had him on our one-on-one program in the past. Let's listen in to a little bit of Mr. Arthur's story.
Didn't you have a partnership or a possible partnership with Al Copeland, and did that tie into Tasty Donuts? Because I've heard all kind of stories.
He used to live across the street where he had Tasty Donut was, and my store was almost across the street, Catacorner. He asked me, he said, Arthur, he says, he's got a lot of people coming in here, y'all doing real well. I said, yes. I says, he said, what kind of sales you doing? So I told him. And he says, I'd like to go in the food business. You would? He says, listen, he said, you come with me to New Orleans. And he said, we'd open up 17 locations in New Orleans. I said, I don't think so. And another one I turned down. So I turned him down, and I told him, I said, no, I said, Al, I said, I don't want to open up, I don't want to go to New Orleans. I was more or less in the beginning stage, and I couldn't foresee that far. Right. He asked me if I could help him out, so I sent him to Morgan City to Howard Corrigan's with Danny's Fried Chicken. So from there, I don't know what took place, but he went to New Orleans and opened up those stores, and he did well.
Several family members were on hand as many took pictures celebrating the great day. Mr. Arthur, so instrumental also with his businesses in getting people started. He was one of HTV's first sponsors back in the day.
Remember when I had to come pitch you about advertising, and I remember one of your first questions, why do I need that? I'm doing well. And so you made me go through my sales presentation at 20-something years old, and that allowed me to grow because you didn't just say, here, you made me prove of why you did it. And I think that's that old school that y'all brought to the table, is that when the young guys went in, y'all made them earn it.
Yeah, well, I recall when you knocking on my door, and I was in the food business, and here I am. I wasn't familiar with too much with commercials. Right. And then you sat down and you laid it out for me, what you could do for me. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go with it. Yeah. And it was real good. It was like Aikens had every year I'd give you $800 for him. He was on the TV commercial.
Right.
So I saw a need. This man here was. I used to help him out because he would get out there and help the people out to give stuff out for Christmas.
Oh, those bicycles. Well, he became famous with the bicycles.
Correct. And that's the reason why I helped him out.
And I know he also helped our district attorney along the way also. But nonetheless, his success story really is second to none.
I knew the boat business. Right. I knew that boat business from the wheelhouse to the engine room. I knew everything about it. And no doubt that I would have made it in the round boat business.
But that's something I never knew. about you, because when I started doing business with you, you were Sunrise Fried Chicken and you were Rallies. I never even knew that you were an electrical contractor till I'm preparing for this show. So you've had a diverse life, haven't you? You've been pretty versatile.
Well, let me say this. When I grew up, I went back to school and got my 11th grade education, and with the education I had, I knew I couldn't make it in life. So and then I was thinking, I said to myself, I need to learn a trade so I can someday go in business for myself. And so that's what I did when I went into the electrical field, because I didn't have a college degree, but I had common sense.
So we want to take this time on Bayou Time to wish Mr. Arthur Breaux a happy birthday, happy 90th year. And like he said at the birthday party, he hopes to see everybody there again for his 100th birthday.
Welcome to this episode of One-on-One. I'm Martin False. Very interesting guest we're going to have on this series of shows, Mr. Arthur Breaux. Now, a lot of you know Mr. Arthur. Some of you, maybe the younger generation, doesn't quite put the name with businesses here and around the area. Well, Mr. Arthur, a self-made millionaire, he won't mind me saying it, and he brought himself up from ground level to where he is today. He's going to be my guest on One-on-One.
One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer.
And welcome back to One-on-One. As promised, my guest today, Mr. Arthur Breaux. There you see Mr. Arthur. And Mr. Arthur, I appreciate you joining us. And just for full transparency, I remember back in the early days of HTV, you were one of those who stepped up and sponsored our programs. So I want to first of all thank you for doing that. You had faith in us, and I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, we went through quite a few recessions.
You're right.
And I also brought in Rally's hamburger.
Yeah.
And we worked together for quite a few years.
Yeah. You brought in a lot. But here's what I remember. And we're going to go back to the early days, but we were talking before the show. I remember when I'd go meet with you, I was a young guy. You were just hitting your stride. And you were pretty successful, and your name was out there. And I remember those meetings we had with you. I used the word meticulous. You paid attention to detail. You made sure everything was right. And I'm sure that was a major reason of your success. Where'd you get that from?
Well, I want to say that I had Danny's Fried Chicken for 1 year, and that was the beginning of my food business. And but I stayed with the food business, and as close as when I used to wear a suit all the time for 20 years. But I had a suit on, and I was driving by them stores, and if they had a line of cars in the drive-up window, I'd take my coat off and go in there and help them. Mm-hmm. So I helped my employees and showed them the right and the correction way do the food business, plus give service to the customer. And service and the quality of the food is number one. Mm-hmm. But I had some good employees, and I had to work with them. And periodically we brought them in the office, and we had meetings, and we went through the whole the list of things is from 1 to 10 is in order to run an operation, the important things. And then we had some assistant managers, and I used to bring them also and teach them. So it went on, and nothing comes easy.
Now, you were born in 1935, if I'm getting my facts correct. I was looking at a picture of your dad, and you told me your dad never wore a suit. We're going to get into that, but you were the caboose of 13 children?
Yes, I was. My poor mother, she worked hard in order to take care of us, and I was the last one, and I helped her a lot.
Well, what's all this? I'm sure y'all didn't have tractors back in the day. Did y'all use the mules on the farms?
Yeah, we had 6 mules, and to do the plowing and so forth. And then sometime we had the wagons would get stuck in the mud. We had to put 4 mules on a wagon to pull the wagon. And we cut cane, and regardless if it was cold or not. we had quite a few days. We had snow, and we had icicles hanging out of trees. Years ago, it was much colder than it is now. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have no boots on. We had shoes on, and our feet was wet, but we were cold. We never stopped.
Well, let me add. We used to laugh, me and Daddy, and my siblings and Mom. We had this saying, living off the land, because Daddy always worked the garden. Even after his retirement, worked the garden, brought vegetables to the house, fished, did everything. You use that expression too, because a lot of people say, well, farm life is great, but farm life is a lot of work, isn't it?
Well, when you go out there with a key knife and cut cane, and you throw them in the row down there, and you got another man across there cutting his row, and they're putting it down, and when we get to the end of the row, you get $1 for cutting that row. And then you...
$1?
Yeah, then we come back again and cut another row, and we get $2. So, but that wasn't it wasn't easy, but we had to get them, pick up those cane and put them on our shoulders and walk up the wagon and put it in the wagon.
Well, what else was on the farm? Because I'm sure it wasn't just sugar cane. A lot of people in those days had their own farm animals. What was on the farm?
Well, we had mules, cows, hogs, chickens, and it was all in one yard. We had nothing but solid mud in the yard. There was no grass in the yard, and the only meat we had was the chicken and the pork. Mm-hmm. We had no other. We had white beans on the table 7 days a week.
One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer.
I think I read that your house had large cracks in it so that it could equalize during the summer. Is that correct?
I'm going to tell you what, we had cracks as wide as my finger. I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
And the walls and the floor also. That was done so in the summer months we'd get air in it. But again, in the winter months, that wasn't good. That cold air was coming through there. We had a bucket with a dipper in it. We'd drink water in a house, and the dipper would get stuck in there with ice. The water would ice up in the house.
Was it one of those old cypress homes where you built everything with cypress?
Yes, correct. So 12-inch boards, and the ceiling. There was no ceiling in the house, and they had a wooden shingles for the roof.
So everything was wood.
Yeah. Sometime when it rained, we had to move our bed. The water would come down.
1 of 13. Do you remember when you have 13 siblings, some are out the house before you, the youngest one, would get to the point where you're about to get out the house? So what were the age ranges? Were they a lot older than you? I'm sure they had to be. Look, my math will tell me they had to be at least 15 or 16 years older than you, if not a lot more.
I had a brother 3 years older than me and a sister 6 years older, but my sister had gotten married and my brother didn't. And I left, and when I went to New Orleans, he stayed on the farm, and he till he died.
Yeah, but 13. And did everybody have a role growing up? Did everybody know they had to pitch in?
Well, I'm gonna tell you what. We had to go out and milk a cow in the morning sometime before I went to school. And sometime at night I'd milk a cow. And that was the only drink we had, that and water. We had no ice in the house. We had to drink water out of the cistern, right, and milk out the cow. That was it. With no refrigeration, no air conditioning, no electric, no water, none. We had to take a bath. We had to go in the bar and get some buckets of water and put it in a number 3 tub.
Was that Bayou Black?
Yes.
Where exactly was the house? Around what area in Bayou Black?
It was about middle, between the church bridge and the school bridge on the Mandalay side.
Okay, all right. So across.
Correct.
Across Bayou Black. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it like growing up in those days in Bayou Black? I've always loved that area. It's about as country as you could get, down to earth people. What was it like for you?
Well, I don't like to think about the memories of the past, because it was not good. And when I left there at 16 and went to New Orleans, I was glad I was in New Orleans. And I went to work for Industrial Electric, doing electrical motor rewinding, and I mastered that trade. And when I came to Houma at 18, and I went to work for a company here, and I left from making 85 cents an hour in New Orleans, came here and worked at $2 an hour. So we had bad luck with this company. They went bankrupt. And when they went bankrupt, I had to find a job. So I found a job with Sleeker at 75 cents an hour. I went from $2 an hour to 75 cents an hour. Yeah. And I was married. So I had to make a big garden in order to survive. Mm-hmm. And I made it through, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah, but you learned, you know, when I talk to people like yourself, and I relate you to my dad, all y'all knew is hard work.
Yes.
Your whole life.
Correct.
But I also know that you have a lot of common sense and a lot of, maybe not formal education along the way, but you sure got a lot of street smarts along the way. But talk about your education. What was your education?
Well, it wasn't good. I went to school, and my teacher spoke English, and I spoke French. So she took me and put me in the back of the room with some little kids. The ones that didn't speak English, she put them in the back. And she left. She would speak English and to all the kids in front. So gradually, I picked up the English, being in the class and being outside playing with the kids. But I didn't know anything in English at all. It was real tough for me.
So you were brought up with
French.
French speaking, okay?
French people.
Yeah. And so about what age did you do the switch over to English, or be bilingual, really?
Approximately, started school at 6. About 7 and 8, I picked up the English.
But I imagine for someone at 6 years old to be put in the back of the class because you're speaking French, that had to be pretty traumatic back then.
Well, I thought about that often, and I know that some teachers was teaching down there that knew French. And it seemed to me that for somewhere along the line, first grade, is when you first come into the school and you can't speak English, they ought to be the one that should have been the teacher, not someone that only spoke English. But I caught hell, and I made it through.
One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer.
You said your dad never wore a coat. What kind of man was he? He had to be hard working to the core.
Well, my dad never had dress clothes. We didn't have dress clothes. We had clothes with patches in it, and 2 suits of clothes for 1 year, and 1 pair of shoes. If they had a hole in it, you wore it. And if you had a hole in your pants or your shirt, Mama would sew it, put a patch in it. And I wore it. And I went to school with it like that. And the kids would laugh at me and bug me because I didn't get a haircut before every 3 months. I didn't get a haircut because we couldn't afford a haircut. Right. And my clothes and when I went to my clothes was with patch at school, and most of the time I went to school with no shoes. I went barefooted. The kids in that time used to go to school with no shoes. It was okay with the teacher.
You then I saw where you went to Main Ironworks, and you were making big money at $2.50 an hour, right?
Well, yeah. I went to Main Ironworks, and I was introduced to Mr. Lawrence Mazurek, which was a hell of a nice guy. And I told him what I could do with motors and repair welding machines and the motors on the lathe or the compressor and everything. So, man, he said, well, I'll put you to work right now. I said, wait a minute. I said, I got something to do, so I'll come back tomorrow. And so I went to work for him, and him and I would talk during the day. He'd give me all kind of tools to repair. So he told me, he says, I'm moving this yard to Bayou Blue. He said, can you help me in Bayou Blue? I said, yeah, I'll be able to help you to wire Bayou Blue yard. So we're moving equipment to Bayou Blue, and I would go down there and wire them up. And I wired up quite a few his lathe and compressors, and he used to have 10 welding machines and a bank of them in one spot, so I had to wire all that, and I maintained all that for him. So it come a day that he decided he wanted to start wiring his own boats. So he hired somebody, because I wasn't an ABS Coast Guard approved electrician. So he put this guy to work, and I went on a boat, and within a short period of time, with the experience I had with electric, all the motors and everything on the boat, I knew how to hook them up and everything. So I didn't have to learn much. So I mastered the trade of the ABS and Coast Guard approved. And I wired the boats there for approximately 2 years. Then I went in business for myself. I opened up a motor rewinding shop.
So you became an electrical contractor, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I had a motor rewinding shop, and that wasn't what I needed much. I wired some motors and went all the way to Houma, from Houma to Grand Isle, and delivered them and picked them up and brought them in the shop and rewind them. And I stopped at Bollinger. I rewound some motors for Bollinger. And he said, Mr. Arthur Breaux, he says, you used to work for me and I, huh? I said, yes, sir. He says, we got a boat we're getting ready to launch in about 6 weeks. He said, I'd like for you to wire it. I said, Dick, I said, I'm just a one-man operator. I said, he says, you can hire somebody. I said, he said, what you going to do? We're going to pay you every week. He said, you don't have to wait a month. He said, you give me my bill every week. He said, we're going to pay you. So I said, I'm going to think about it. So I went into Houma. So I spoke to somebody that I knew a little bit about wiring. He wasn't ABS Coast Guard approved electrician, but I put him to work when they launched the boat. We launched that boat, and then he had another one coming in about another 6 weeks. So I got so that I couldn't rewind my motors in the shop in Houma anymore. I had enough with Bollinger's boats, and then I got some more work from Bayou, there's more shipyards in Bayou that found out that I was wiring boats for Bollinger. So I wired some boats for them. So I got out of the motor rewinding business. And I worked for them for 14 years. And one day I decided, I had some Sunrise fried chicken going. I had 3 of them. And I decided I was going to quit wiring boats. It was tough wiring boats. Service calls all the way from Texas to Alabama, all along the river. And the electricians I had working for me didn't like to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I would have to get up and just get in my truck and take off. So I decided that I wanted to go in the food business. So I told Dick one day, called me, he says, Arthur, he said, we're going to Morgan City, we're going to go bid on a boat they caught a fire. I said, okay. So we went to Morgan City, looked at the boat. I took an estimate what the electrical was. He did his end of it. So on the way back, he says, Arthur, he says, you told me you'd gone out of business in December. That was in September. So I gave him quite a few months to be able to find somebody else. He says, if you stay wiring boats with us, he said, we'll build a boat, you and I, half and half. And he said, we're going to finance it with the bank. It ain't going to cost you nothing. I said, no, I don't think so. So I passed that up. And I got someone to wire his boat that I used to work for me at Main Iron Works. So I left and went into the food business. And they were very nice people to work for.
Yeah.
There was 4 brothers, and I was the 5th brother. And that's the way it was. And they took care of me. I had nothing to say about these people.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, Call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
Most everybody who knows you from the food business, if they're my age. I'm sure the older statespeople would know you from the hard work before that, but what was tugging on you that made, besides the 2 a.m. calls to the boats, something else had to be pulling you towards the food business?
Well, I wanted to expand and be able to work much easier, where I wouldn't have to do all these service calls. And I was getting to the point where I wanted to find something else. I found the food business, and so I decided that I could expand into the food business. So I did. I had 16 locations before I sold it, and everything in the food business has that register and that service and that quality. If you don't handle that register and that food service over that register, and if a customer come in there and got to wait a long time, they get teed off, and the cashier's got to be number one, and that cook in the back got to produce good quality of food. Mm-hmm. And so I stayed along with it for 16 years. No, for 30 years. And I had 16 locations. And it was not easy. Mm-hmm. And I decided that I didn't want to be in the food business anymore.
Yeah, but you built, in that period of time, you built an empire that you had, but I've heard all the stories, and I want, for the audience, I'm going to let you tell us the story. But didn't you have a partnership or a possible partnership with Al Copeland, and did that tie into Tasty Donuts? Because I've heard all kind of stories.
Well, Al and I was friends then, and he used to live across the street where he had Tasty Donut was, and my store was almost across the street, Catacona. And he asked me, he says, Arthur, he says, he's got a lot of people coming in here, y'all doing real well. I said, yes. I says, he says, what kind of sales you doing? So I told him. And he says, I'd like to go in the food business. You would? He said, listen, he said, you come with me to New Orleans, and he said, we'd open up 17 locations in New Orleans. I said, I don't think so. And another one I turned down. So I turned him down, and I told him, I said, no, I said, Al, I said, I don't want to open up, I don't want to go to New Orleans. I was more or less in the beginning stage, and I couldn't foresee that far. Right. But he was right. Yeah. And so he asked me if I could help him out. So I sent him to Morgan City to Howard Corrigan's with Danny's Fried Chicken. So from there, I don't know what took place, but he went to New Orleans and opened up those stores, and he did well.
Y'all both had good chicken. So what was the competition like when you're talking about who has the best chicken? I'm sure that always drove y'all to have the best chicken, right?
Well, the people that like a lot of spice went to Al Copeland. And if the people didn't like the spice, they came to Sunrise Fried Chicken. Mm-hmm. And but Al put a lot of money into it. He built some nice stores. He did the right thing, and he didn't stop. He went through it like fire. Right. And he did well.
But his drive was to get really big.
Yeah.
your drive was to maintain and have a good living. Two different playing fields, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what was it like passing up Bollinger Shipyards? We all know where Bollinger is now. Passing up Al Copeland's. But wouldn't your life have changed quite a bit if either one of those directions you would have taken?
Well, if I'd have went with Bollinger, I would have built one boat, but might have had 100. If I know Arthur Breaux, he would not stop. And so, because I knew the boat business. Right. I knew that boat business from the wheelhouse to the engine room. I knew everything about it. And no doubt that I would have made it in the rental boat business.
But that's something I never knew about you, because when I started doing business with you, you were Sunrise Fried Chicken and you were Rallies. I never even knew that you were an electrical contractor till I'm preparing for this show. So you've had a diverse life, haven't you? You've been pretty versatile.
Well, let me say this. When I grew up, I went back to school and got my 11th grade education, and with the education I had, I knew I couldn't make it in life. So, and then I was thinking, I said to myself, I need to learn a trade so I can someday go in business for myself. And so that's what I did when I went into the electrical field, because I didn't have a college degree, but I had common sense. Mm-hmm. And the common sense drove me to success.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
But you also had connections too with, you were one of those hard-working blue-collar guys, just tough to the bone. You were cousins with Barry Bonvillain, you were cousins with J.B. Breaux. Y'all had a pretty good lineage of just rolling up the sleeves and getting to work.
We did, and we went to, we had, for 13 years, we gave, on Thanksgiving Day, we gave Thanksgiving dinners out. And it was not easy getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to get up, but we managed, and we've served turkeys to all these people with side orders. And I later formed concerned citizens of Houma, Bayou, and Gibson. Mm-hmm. And we formed an organization, and we went to Gordy Dove and asked Gordy Dove to come down there and buy a black. Mm-hmm. And because we had water.
I remember the meeting. I remember you being there.
The water from Houma, it was pumped on Bayou Black. Mm-hmm. So we didn't know that until I got involved in it, and I found out that the water was coming from Bayou Black. It wasn't all the rainwater. Right. So I spoke to the council and Gordy, and so Gordy said yes. He says, we're going to put some pumps down there. So the concerned citizens did well, talking with Gordy, and he took care of us, and he put the pumps in, and I went down there with him, and he cut the ribbon. So Now we have, when it rains, we don't have water on our property like we used to. I lost about 20 or more sansuma trees. The water would come in and it gets around the trees and it would kill the tree.
Right.
I had about 125 trees. So the water came in and killed the trees. And the water would damage a lot of people's house. It would get inside of people's house. So we got together and we got some help and it paid off.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember, and I'm just going by memory here, I remember reading an old newspaper article, and I think the first line of it was, Arthur Breaux is a self-made millionaire. Do you remember that article?
Yes, the Houma Courier took a picture of me over at, I think it was at St. Charles Street, that store I had there. And it was exciting, and the people in Houma all called me, congratulated me, and it was nice.
But here's a guy who grew up the last of 13, didn't have a whole bunch of clothes, had one pair of shoes to wear.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, you're a self-made millionaire, which became a self-made multimillionaire. But it never changed you as a person because you knew where you came from, didn't you?
Well, let me say this. When I was raised, the kids used to make fun of me at school the way I was dressed with patch clothes and all that type of stuff. And when I come up, I said to myself, you know, these people making fun of me, and no one in the community would come there and say, here's a suit of clothes or anything. I'll say, well, we're going to help you with your homework. It wasn't like that.
Right.
We had to struggle. And that made me think different. I wanted to help people. About 2 weeks ago, I stood up on the corner of Savannah and Mandalay in my truck and gave some free sansumas away. And I'm giving some away today. It's not easy to be a millionaire, but you have to be able to sometime go and talk to people that can help you. And being common sense led me to the people that could help me. And I joined the Masonic Lodge when I was 21, and I'm a Mason. Mm-hmm. And the Masons help people also.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
I have a cheat sheet because I want to go over some of your community involvement. Lifetime member, like you just said, of the Masonic Lodge. You formed the Youth and Elderly Life Center in your early years of business, where assistance was given to the needy with costs such as burial expenses, utility bills, and housing. And one example, a family of 19 whose home was destroyed by a fire. You aided in finding new housing for the family, and in the past, for many years, the organization which you formed also provided 2,500 meals on Thanksgiving Day to the homeless and infirm. Also, you're a volunteer with the Aikens Christmas Project for many years, and of course, you alluded to the fact when you were more young and energetic, but I remember Mr. Aikens, and that was certainly a fine man. You were involved in Mardi Gras Cruise for many years, Crew of Caesar and Metairie for 4 years. Your daughter, Gloria was the second queen.
Sure.
Your crew of Hercules for 13 years. You served as Duke for 1 year. Crew of Mardi Gras. Wasn't that your brainchild way back when?
It was, and there was no money, and I loaned them $33,000 to do the work that they take, the money they take to make the club, and we didn't have money. We rode with 8 floats the first year. I rode for 5 years, and it was tough. And so I rode for 5 years, and then I got out. But yes, I did all those things, and I believe in helping people. Help people because when I came up, no one came to me and helped me when I needed help.
Mm-hmm. But you've given to hospitals. You've been on foundations. You've given to Vanderbilt Catholic. You've formed the Concerned Citizens of Houma for Bayou, Black, and Gibson. And, I mean, it goes on, but something early on sets a seed for people to act like they do when they get older. So I guess your childhood just kept feeding into one day, when I make it, I'm going to make life a little easier for somebody else.
Somebody else. I give Vanderbilt, when they expanded the school a few years back, they came to my office and asked me to donate money to them. So I donated $200 a month for a couple of years, and so that I could help them out. And then everything that I did it for a reason. People need it. I'm not a person that's going to just throw money on the table for someone that's going to waste it. If someone asks me for money, I'm going to ask them what they want to use it for. If they don't give me a good reason, I'm going to tell them no. Yeah.
Well, that's the Mr. Arthur Breaux. I remember when I had to come pitch you about advertising, and I remember one of your first questions, why do I need that? I'm doing well. And so you made me go through my sales presentation at 20-something years old, and that allowed me to grow because you didn't just say, here, you made me prove of why you did it. And I think that's that old school that y'all brought to the table, is that when the young guys went in, y'all made them earn it.
Yeah, well, I recall when you knocking on my door, and I was in the food business, and here I am. I wasn't familiar with too much with commercials.
Right.
And then you sat down and you laid it out for me, what you could do for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go with it.
Yeah.
And it was real good. It was like Aikens had every year I'd give you $800 for him.
Right.
He was on the TV commercial.
Right.
So I saw a need. This man here was. I used to help him out because he would get out there and help the people out to give stuff out for Christmas.
Oh, those bicycles. Well, he became famous with the bicycles.
Correct. And that's the reason why I helped him out, because he was helping a lot of people, giving these bicycles out.
When did you know? I'm going to go back to that article where it said Arthur Breaux is a self-made millionaire. When did you know you had made it?
Well, I guess it was a shock to me. My CPA and I would meet once a month, and we look at our sales and the past P&L, and it was Purnell Pellegrin was my CPA.
Yeah.
He said, Arthur, you finally made it, huh? I said, what I made? And he said, you finally made a millionaire.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, look, so many things that you have done for this community, and I'm going to tell the audience that Joe H., my dear friend, was calling me and said, when you going to put Mr. Arthur Breaux on? I said, oh, he's definitely on the list. You were right up there when all this COVID hit, and we'd have had you on a while back, but you've done so well, and it's a great story. And if I were able to get all your friends and your family and people you've worked with throughout the years, and I got them in a room, and I said, I want y'all to give me one word to describe Mr. Arthur Breaux. What would you hope the one word would be that they tell me?
Give. If you don't give, you won't receive.
Very true. Generous.
Well, I just hope that the younger generation can learn from some of the things that I've done out there.
Mm-hmm. They will. They see it all around them, and now that they've watched your show, they'll know a little bit more about Arthur Breaux.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, there's a lot of people call me and come to me and ask me questions about life, what's going on in that business and that whatever. They ask me a lot of questions.
Well, if I can give them any advice, I would tell them to listen, because you've walked the walk.
Yes, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And I helped a lot of people that walked over me.
Yeah, that's the sign of a true person.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's
Mr. Arthur. I appreciate you joining us.
Nice talking with you.
This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.